Hello, future me. So, what I'm wanting to do is compare the Wheel of Time, the books, to the show. There's a lot of content on YouTube and podcasts discussing whether they did it right, and the short answer is kind of. Um, the that's the short answer. The long answer is that the show has a budget. The show has people with their own opinions that aren't making a show to try to recreate the book one for one. I thought the best way to do this was to listen to all 14 books, including the prequel, and watch the show. And that took me about 2 months. I've listened to the books multiple times. I do it once or twice a year, along with Brandon Sanderson's work and with Brent Weeks. All of their collective works I listen to at least once a year, uh, except for maybe the Stormlight Archive by Sanderson. I save that for when they release the next in the series. So sometime at the end of 2024, I'll be listening to the whole Stormlight Archive again. But this is something that I've listened to multiple times. The Wheel of Time, I feel, is a good series. Once you get through it the first time, I find enjoyment in listening to it again to try to find the breadcrumbs. Um, Brandon is good at this. Brent Weeks is good at this. Especially for fantasy, with a lot of lore and a lot of history and a lot of moving parts and things like prophecy. It's good when an author can put the breadcrumbs in and force a reader, not force, it's good when an author can reward a reader for reading it again. And I feel like that's important. I feel like Robert Jordan did an excellent job. I feel like Brandon Sanderson does an excellent job as well. And so, yes, I listen to it at least once a year, and I should go back and read The Eye of the World again, just because I'm working on the comparison from the show to the book. But I have it on Audible and on Kindle, so I've been able to go through season one, episode one in its entirety, watching the show as I make notes, comparing it up to chapter 10, which is where episode 2 starts. I left out the prologue because they don't address it at all. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was that I just spoke about authors rewarding readers for going back to read it again. I feel that of all the mistakes that could be pointed out in the show, is that they're not they're not rewarding the book readers. The book readers and the popularity of the series is the only reason the show exists, and the creators of the show did not reward them. There's some things that are in the show that look good or seem to be executed well, but there's some glaring things missing from the show. Now, if they show them later, then that would be good, I think. I mean, if you show it at some point, then that's good. That's what the readers wanted, was to see their book come to life. But for season 1, episode 1, I feel like this is your chance as a show creator to capture your book reader audience and bring them in. You know, a reader is used to accepting certain things, and the show watchers, the ones that are watching the show for the very first time and have no concept of what the series is about or what the show is about or any kind of context related to it, they don't care what show you make as long as it's entertaining. But the readers have some expectation to try to hold true, naming all your characters, the characters after your book, and then deviating from major aspects of it is a great way to turn that fan base away. And there's tons of YouTube content showing that. I was just looking right here. Daniel Green has several videos on it. He's very upset, which, you know, that's to be expected. You know, we've got all kinds of YouTube videos, how the Wheel of Time fans recommend the Wheel of Time. You know, and it's a running gag. You know, how many times can we talk about dresses with slash skirts and slashes of color through them? How many times can Nynaeve tug on her braid? There's comments all through YouTube everywhere showing clips from the show about what they did wrong, and they would still get that hate no matter what. But the first episode, I feel, could have been done better, and I'm going to try to explain why, from a book reader's perspective, why this first episode was so jarring and frankly disappointing. And then when I get to the end of the first episode, I want to talk about the many things that they did well. The show is a good show. One of my good friends, he's the one that forced me to watch it. I tried to watch it a long time ago, and it was absolutely painful, and I immediately turned the show off and didn't pick it up until he and I spoke. And he said he loved it. He loved every episode. He thought it was great. He followed along. He thought it was entertaining. You know, why don't I like this show? And I tried to explain it to him, and you know, he said he got it, but as a show watcher, just from the perspective of the show, it is a good show. So I want to talk about season 1, episode 1 of The Wheel of Time. The book is called The Eye of the World, and this covers chapter 1 through chapter 10, excluding the prologue. The exclusion of the prologue from a production standpoint makes total sense. The prologue is not in the same age as the first book, so that would add a lot of confusion to it would add a lot of confusion to the viewer base, especially if they've never heard of this series before. I do feel like it needs to be somewhere in the series at some point. They need to show what happened. They need to show that scene from the prologue in the show somewhere before the show ends, or it's going to be very upsetting. So the scene opens. Moraine is doing a Lord of the Rings style monologue. This obviously isn't in the book either, which is fine. You know, it's familiar. This type of monologue is familiar, and from a viewer perspective, it's great. You've got a scene going on where she's getting ready in the White Tower. So I'm not really sure when the time is set of her getting ready. I don't think that she had been back to the White Tower since she left 20 years prior. I could be wrong. I have to look at book 2 to find that out for sure. But I'll go back and tweak this as I read the book again. So she's monologuing and she says, many, many years ago, men who were born with great power believed they could cage darkness itself. That's true. Um, the dragon thought he could, uh, more because he had to than, the Aes Sedai of that era, of that age, didn't think it could be done, which is why he went out with his 100 companions, his male channelers, and they went to go try to cage the Dark One. So the statement is true, but it's kind of a twisting of words. They make it sound like arrogance, which she says right here. The arrogance. He was arrogant, but not for the reason that she's making it sound like. So she goes on to say, when they failed, the seas boiled, mountains were swallowed up, cities burned, and the women of the Aes Sedai were left to pick up the pieces. Everything's true, every little bit of that. Taken out of context, and that's what Aes Sedai do best. So good for them. This is a great introduction because the actress who plays Moraine has an excellent voice. She's got the timing down right. I don't necessarily agree with all this info dumping right at the beginning, but she's getting ready and she's got her water with him, so I kind of get it. You gotta start the show somewhere. I would have preferred this monologue. This monologue with her getting ready and or her ending statement. Let me see if I can find it without losing everything. So one of the things that I'm missing is the intro for the wind. Robert always talks about the wind at the beginning of his books, and it's a little upsetting that they left all that out. So she says everything up to the wind was not the beginning. They're neither beginnings, but it was a beginning. And Robert always ended that paragraph just like that, and then he always went into the path of the wind. Born below the ever cloud-capped peaks that gave the mountains their name, the wind blew east, out across the sandhills, once the shore of a great ocean, before the breaking of the world. So it goes on. I don't want to read too much. But he talks about the path of the wind. And while I agree that this outro is absolutely fantastic for the show, I felt like a possible better intro would have been the path of the wind while she reads that same section. Takes 2 paragraphs directly out of the book. I don't know how hard it is to animate the wind and have it follow a landscape, but they've also got Leaves of the Wind Power in the show. I think it would have been a good visual, and it would have pressed the reader's nostalgia button immediately. We all know the paragraphs from the books. It would have been a good visual, and it would drive the show watchers to say, "What the heck was that?" And now you have the readers and the watchers something to talk about. So let me move on. And they named him Dragon. Yes, that's true. Now, this man... See, she gave herself her own plot hole. So it says, now this man has been born again. It's not really a plot hole, but let me move down just a little bit more. So she says, we don't know where or to whom. That's true. We don't really know where. And then she says, if he was reborn as a girl or a boy. And every reader of the books, that's where I stop the show. like I tried to watch. I have some notes about where she actually says that, and that's where I stopped the show immediately. I did not want to watch a show that completely deviated off of one of the major plot points of the book. The quote is from the book: "He is born again. I feel him. Dragon takes his first breath on the slope of Dragon Mount. He is coming. He is coming. Light help us. Light help the world. He lies in the snow and cries like the thunder. He burns like the sun." I mean, it's pretty clear that it's a he. So I don't know if this was for effect. I'm not a show writer. I don't think it was necessary to include whether it was a girl or a boy. I don't think the addition of having it be possibly a girl contributed anything to the enjoyment of the show. Including it just to include it when it serves no purpose, all that does is antagonize people that know the actual story. So if it made the show more compelling, then I'm wrong. You know, maybe from a show perspective, you're watching it and saying, "Oh, I wonder who it is." But it's just hard. It's hard from a reader's perspective to listen to that when the whole plot of the first book was, we don't know who the dragon is, but it's one of you three boys. Spoiler alert if you didn't realize that already. It says the only thing we know for certain is that this child is coming of age now and must find them before the dark does. That's very true. That's a major point all throughout the series. The forces of evil have a pretty convoluted plot line. They have plenty of opportunity to kill whoever the dragon may be, and they don't always. I mean, obviously they don't take that opportunity. I don't know if it's discussed in the show yet. I'll have to hold off on that. I don't mind spoiling things, but I'm trying to keep the timelines in my head so I don't go too crazy. So I move on to the hunt for the dragon, and this is the Red Aja, which we learn about later on, specifically Leandrin, and she's chasing what appears to be two men. It's one man who's going mad, and it's not Logain. I thought it was. I was wrong. That made me mad in the show too, but I just assumed it was Logain. I assumed if the show was going to make that kind of mistake, that they would make this one too. I was wrong. It's not Logain. But this kind of madness where he sees somebody next to him or hears voices, that's pretty common. So I like the way the show did this, where he says it's not his fault, and she says, "Who are you talking about?" And then the scene cuts away to the man by himself, and it's great. It's great to see on his face how scared he is. He doesn't understand what's going on. The panic is real. The show did a really good job on that. And then they took all that goodwill and threw it back in my face personally. So Leandrin and the other sisters wear their emotions on their faces. The scene where they're riding the horses and they all look mad or determined. That I don't know if the show's ever going to pursue this in detail, but part of the whole purpose of the White Tower and the Aes Sedai is that they've shaped themselves into being leaders of the political powers of the world. So you got kings, you've got queens, and some of them have an Aes Sedai as an advisor, and they have a whole Aja dedicated to negotiation, It's a big thing. It's a big part of their organization. They fight for the light, yes. They fight passionately, yes. But above all things, they have to be calm and composed. That's kind of their thing. And so they do a decent job, just not here. When they're on the horses, they all look mad and determined, and it's just that's not what I wanted to see from a group of Aes Sedai at the beginning of the show. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's just different. I don't know how the show writers will address that, if they'll just cut it all out, or if they may come up with some reason later on. And it's fine. Let's move on. This part bothered me, but not from anything other than a personal standpoint. A lot of readers understand that the three oaths that control what the Aes Sedai are able to do are real. They cannot break those three oaths. They can't defy them. They can't deviate from them. And when Liandrin stops this man by knocking a bunch of rocks off a cliff, I don't know that she would be able to do that, because if the one power, she can't use the one power as a weapon, so she can't. She might have been able to wrap him up in air, which is done often in the books. I don't know if she would be allowed to knock rocks off a cliff. And they're definitely not allowed to gentle or kill him, like cut him off from the one power permanently or kill him. And that's kind of what it sounded like, but I don't really know. If all they did was shield him and take him captive, then that's fine. Anyways, so the scene cuts away to Lan and Moraine watching the scene, and again, this is just from a reader's perspective. Just to be clear, why readers get kind of bent out of shape about the show. So Lan Mandragoran, the male partner to Moraine, is a warder, and he is from the Borderlands, and he is notorious for being stoic. So he just does what has to be done. He's just a solid rock that everybody can depend on. He doesn't complain. He doesn't argue. He makes valid points when he needs to, but in the end, he's going to do what has to be done. And he's notorious for not showing any emotion on his face whatsoever. He does not laugh in the series until, I think, book 6 out of a 14-book series. So to show him immediately on screen with his eyebrow raised is very out of character compared to the books. He does a good job when they get to the Two Rivers of keeping his face kind of controlled, and maybe that's intentional. It shows that Lan and Moraine have a more intimate bond in private. I like to think of the show as like a different perspective of what happens in the book. Sometimes they overlap, but scenes like this where Lan and Moraine are alone, maybe he does loosen up a little bit. But I don't think so. I don't have the proof, because I can't know exactly how that relationship would have went. But Moraine says that's not who it is. We're going to go to the Two Rivers, and then the show throws another bomb on all the readers and says there's rumors of 4 ta'veren there, all the right age. So she's linking ta'veren to being the dragon, and Moraine doesn't know if they're ta'veren or not. She knows what a ta'veren is, but like it says here in my notes, I checked, ta'veren isn't even mentioned until much later in the book. ironically in a part of the book that didn't make it into the show at all. And there's never been 4 mentioned specifically. The three that have been mentioned are Matt, Perrin, and Rand. And then I guess the 4th here is either Egwene or Nynaeve. I can't tell. Anyways, so I really don't know what to do about the scenes that don't exist in the book. Like, I do like this scene. It's kind of interesting. It says this is Nynaeve doing a ceremony with Egwene of her getting her braid, and I think it's interesting. I don't think it's accurate at all, but it is interesting. I enjoyed it, especially, let's see, where it says the finale of the scene. This is the blue is my writing for anybody that eventually watches this. The finale of the scene: fighting the current in the water and the turbulence and panicking. She's fallen in, Nynaeve pushed her off, and she's in the water panicking absolutely. And then she calms down, floats on her back, and once she chills out and quote unquote surrenders to the river, then she's fine. She makes it to shore, she gets out, and the visual of this is great for demonstrating how Sidar, the female half of the True Source, works. So after that scene, we cut to the 2 rivers. They're technically already there with the ceremony, but we've got Tam and Rand. This scene is not a 1-for-1, but I like it. One of the things I was hoping that they would capture really well is that this is a small village with there's no technology back then. The book specifically states that the only news that they get is from the peddler or the merchant that shows up like once or twice a year. And they don't want anybody there. A stranger is a big deal, and they get several all in one day, and it's a big thing to have that many people there. Everybody's almost shook about it. So Rand says there's more wolves now, and I'm wondering why the show did this. I think the show writers decided that they needed a reason to make it clear that wolves existed in the world and that they were close by. Probably setting up a scene for Perrin later on, which I'll have to watch the second or third episode again to really see. Anyways, they talk about Egwene, and yes, Rand sounds like a real sap. And then we go here, and this is a part of the show that I enjoyed a lot. We've got the inn where Bran and Marn Alvear, that's Egwene's parents, they own the inn, and Bran is the mayor, and everybody's getting ready for Beltane, the festival, and it's not a 1-for-1, and I don't expect it to be. I thought they did a good job. I don't like some of the things that they did with the 3 boys in this. This is not what the book did, but I like to think that part of this is what happened off screen in the book. This next part where we're introduced to Matt and Perrin. This whole group of scenes here is really frustrating to me. I guess if you're watching the show for the first time, you don't really understand what the problem is if a book reader is complaining about it. So they show Matt, and Matt's gambling, and he loses all his money, and that's fine. He does often try to pry one more game out of everybody. But then he says to Perrin, he says, "You're married. Your life's over." And if I hadn't already committed to watching the whole show, I probably would have turned it off again right there, because Perrin is not married in the first book at all. They don't talk about it. They don't hint at it. These boys have just become men recently. It's not they're not married. But anyways, so we move on. Now they're talking about the War in Gildon. I believe that's where Logain is. It's all good. Good information. And then we move on. It says they introduced a new character, Danya. And my problem with this scene is that they're setting up Matt to be a thief, and I'm not really happy with that. He's not a thief ever. He's never had that personality trait. I don't know why they did it, other than to, what I think is that they set up his thievery as a substitute for greed, so that they could justify him taking the dagger to the viewers. And I just don't agree with that. Matt is a gambler and a lover of money and jewels, but he's not a thief. He's going to try to wiggle out of whatever commitment he has. But if you can pin him down with a promise, he's going to follow it. That's a big plot point later on in the series, and to show him being a thief is it was a little discouraging. So we move on. I like all this. I like the introduction to Moraine. I apologize if somebody watching this down the road is not familiar with the show or the books. But what I have right in front of me is a transcript from the show, and I've put my own notes in here and tried to organize it. So that's why you see like this thunder rumbling and the little music notes. This is a direct one-for-one from a transcript on the show. And then I've kind of organized it. When I put enter the main character question mark, because one of my friends said that Moraine is the main character, and that's true for the show. It's not true for the book. The book has a few main characters, and then it's really like a group effort. I've noticed a lot of let's see, where did I? Oh yeah, one of the videos I was looking at earlier was like how Wheel of Time fans recommend the Wheel of Time, and they're talking about Robert Jordan having literally hundreds of characters that barely have any screen time or don't make any sense, and then they disappear forever. And that's true. But one of the major points of the book is that you can't do everything on your own. The hero is not always just one person. Sometimes the hero is a group of people, and it's the battle of good versus evil, not one man versus the boss fight. So I don't have a problem with it. I understand from like a show perspective that Moraine needs to be the centerpiece, because Rosamund Pike is a beautiful actress and she's on screen a lot, and she's the authority figure. She's the Gandalf of the series. She's the wise, has all the answers. I'm really looking forward to her events that happen in the book, if those happen the way they do, if they do that in the show or not. So Lan and Moraine enter, and they talk about getting rooms for the night. I'm not gonna I'll mention it, but it's not really anything important, but they already have rooms. They already have rooms in the inn when Rand shows up, and it's not really that important. I did think it was interesting that the show showed all tile roofs, and one of the characters in the town is a thatcher who does does roofing. And while the inn has tiles, I don't think any of the other houses do. So to see all the other buildings with tile, I thought was amusing. Um, let's see here. I'm trying to remember. I know Rand and Egwene are talking, and then Nynaeve is 100% book accurate here. She says, "I don't care where she's going to, but we'll be happier and safer when she's there." Nynaeve is her hot temper is loud and clear here. It was perfect. And then right after that, even though I don't agree with the inclusion of the character Layla, Nynaeve is also she's hot-headed, but she's also the wisdom. She did a really good job here on screen, showing that she's looking out for someone from the village. She tells Perrin, "Where's your wife? Go spend time with your wife." It's uh, it's a nice depiction, and I think for people that have only seen the show, it was a good demonstration of what kind of person Nynaeve is. Um, I laughed when I wrote this because a brief visit to the forged plot point because the marriage is not not book accurate. I don't know why she exists. I don't know why she holds his pinky all the time. I don't know why they appear to be in a disgruntled marriage. There's not really any kind of explanation. Maybe later on in season 3 or 4 they'll discuss it. But I I don't know. I didn't like it just because it wasn't in the book. Mm. Okay. The when I started this video, one of the things that I mentioned is that from a book reader's perspective, episode 1 of season 1 of the show about the book you love needs to have a certain amount of accuracy to reward your readers for making the show possible. And the plot point with the Aes Sedai and little things like that I've talked about already, like with the Aes Sedai showing their face expressions and things like that, don't really bother me as much as I'm saying. Um, but what does bother me is making Matt out to be a thief. And then this scene right here, I personally think they have butchered Matt Cawthon's character and his family um, to the point where that's not the same character. This is not Matt. So Matt leaves the inn and sees his mom, and she's pissed because he's uh, hitting on some girl. And Abel Cawthon is not that kind of man. He's not. He's a horse trader in the books. He's an excellent horse trader. He knows his horses well. He treats his family well. His Matt's sisters are not scared of anybody. They're good Two Rivers girls. The mother, I don't remember if her name is brought up. It has to be. I just can't recall it. But Abel Cawthon is a good man. He shows up much later in the series, and for them to butcher his character like that right at the beginning is very upsetting. Um, so my theory about why they made Matt's dad kind of a ladies' man is that Matt is a notorious ladies' man. He's he likes to flirt with the girls, and he's constantly looking at them. He can't keep his eyes off them. He thinks every woman is beautiful, and we all know somebody like that. They just can't help themselves. Whereas Perrin is like this, in the books, he's like this stoic, like just boulder of a man that won't move. And Rand is very passionate. So you've got three different types of characters, and Matt's just Matt. Let's move on. I really don't like this scene. It makes me upset. And another like minor note is Matt's sisters enter the book later, or enter the series later on, probably about, I'd say, book 4, and they look too young to fulfill the role that's in book 4. The whole Wheel of Time, I believe, lasts 2 years, from the Eye of the World all the way to A Memory of Light. So for them to look that young means that either I'm not understanding the ages involved for later on, or the show just didn't realize that. But anyways, try to edit those out. Sorry about that. This scene is good. I think from a viewer perspective, this scene is great. So you've got the innkeeper's wife and Tam Althor and Bran talking, and I think this is good information for the viewer. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's plausible. And Maren Alvear saying that 1,000 wars have washed over the lands down mountain, and Two Rivers folk don't have any more need to pay attention to it now than before. I mean, she's right. Two Rivers is mostly left alone. I mean, she lives there, so she would know. It's plausible. And then Aes Sedai don't fight wars. That's a very interesting statement from Tam. I like that the show is hinting that Tam knows more than maybe some of the other people in the show, and that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. I like that the show did this. Next up is this scene between Rand and Egwene, and so they're doing the dishes, and then Egwene becomes as forward as a Saldaean farmer at harvest. So I'm not really sure what that's about. I think the show writers just wanted to put in a love interest that was very clear and to the point, and that it wasn't just a love interest, it was an actual, like, it was actually them. Hold on a second. It was actually showing like that the relationship was already physical. So in the books it wasn't physical. That would have never flown in that town. But for the show it's fine. You see that there's been some intimacy. I would be curious to know what Lanfear would think about that, since she's either, I can't remember if she's able to sense it or if she just gets told that information by somebody later on. But I found it interesting. And then move on to Lan's buns are cold. This is a scene that is very, very real. Lan makes a comment. He's not complaining. He's not asking Moraine to do anything. But he is amused that Moraine does not have the water very hot. I really like the way this scene was constructed, and she heats up the water, and like everything about this scene I think is perfect. From a show perspective, it could have 100% happened in the book, and I enjoyed every bit of it. And then we move on. Almost to I think we're a little over halfway through the first episode. I really need to go take a break for just a minute. All right, sorry about that. So again, I keep coming back to what I was trying to get across at the beginning of this video is that I'm trying to explain as both a avid Wheel of Time reader and as the show. I enjoyed the show as a show enjoyer after I gave it a chance. Why this episode is so important to get right, and they didn't get it right. They lost a lot of fan base that they could have capitalized on. They could have received more budget down the road from the additional viewers. They could have done some of the things that I've talked about, including little Easter eggs to make the show rewatchable. Instead, it's not bland. It's enjoyable, but I don't think it's very rewatchable, at least at this point. In fact, my friend that made me watch it hasn't watched it again since it's come out. So I think I've watched it more than him, and that's from a research perspective, not because I'm looking for, Easter eggs that they may have slipped in. I don't expect it because of all the changes that the show writers made. Why would I expect anything to reward me as a reader prior to watching the show? That's what I'm really trying to get across, specifically in episode 1. As we move on to other episodes, a lot of this stuff will be repetitive if I keep bringing it up. I just really want to drive home that there are significant changes, and it's put off a lot of readers from watching the show ever. So Egwene and Rand have a little argument. That's accurate. It's not accurate timeline-wise, but it is accurate. I don't have any problem with this. Move on to the Peddler, Pada and Fane. One of my all-time favorite characters, despite readers' complaints. I've heard many people complain about the character Pada and Fane throughout the series. I don't have a problem with it. I think Robert Jordan's struggle with the character is fine. Writers should struggle with characters, especially ones that are a little out of the ordinary. And I thought that whether Brandon wrote the character's finale himself or whether he pulled it out of Robert's notes, I think the job was well done. I think it was executed well. But anyway, so Pada and Fane comes in. He's got a big smile on his face. I love the person who's playing Pada and Fane. He does a good job. Very, very cocky, lots of swagger, and I think it's a good to see him interacting with Matt, even though that didn't technically happen. But we're assuming that Matt's character is going to be a thief at the beginning of the show based on what happened. And so Pot and Fane has to deal with Matt so that we can set up this statement here, but will I be able to sell it here in town? The whole plot point, they set up Matt to be a thief and Pot and Fane to be a fence to take the item to another town and sell it. That's fine. I don't agree with it, but it matches with what the show is attempting to do. It gives the viewer, some context for things that are going to happen later on in the show. Some of the things that the villagers have spoken about, like the war in Gildan and all that, are originally said by Fane. Normally, this town, the Two Rivers, doesn't get their news except from specifically Pot and Fane. He's one of the only people that makes it all the way out here. I don't think a map is shown, but like the distances involved are pretty remarkable. It takes a while to get to the Two Rivers by horse, and there's nothing really there, so most people just leave it alone. It's ignored. Anyways, so move on, and we go. There's a quick cutscene where it shows Moraine and Lan talking about thinking that one of the islets is here already. I forgot to do my research on that. I don't think they have a discussion like that, because the books I thought were since consents, not dark friends, but creatures of the shadow. So like Trollocs, Murdral, or the Eyeless is what they're calling them here. They can normally sense that. I don't remember exactly how the scene played out, but I don't think it was specifically like this. But it's, from a show perspective, it's good. We both have work to do today. It's a good line. Shows their determination, and then it shows, I guess they split up, and Moraine and Nynaeve talk, and some of this happens off screen in the books, and I think this conversation is important. Right here, where it says, but no one can remember exactly when. That's the thing about little towns. Point that she's one of these Taviran, or possibly, oh no. Okay, sorry, I thought my stream stopped, which isn't a problem, but I'm trying to record this all in one shot so I can just edit it and put it on YouTube. Maybe I can edit out the ums and my coughs while I'm at it. So Moraine's trying to make a case that Nynaeve could be the dragon, which she's not. Anybody that's watched the show up to the end of season 2 knows that Rand is the dragon. And I've already talked about the prophecy that basically excludes women from being the dragon. I do like the concept. I feel like if the writer had put it in there and then they transitioned it to the show, it would have been good. But you have to understand that Robert Jordan wrote from a very specific mentality and put his world in a very specific time period. So a lot of people call it sexist. I think it's just, I don't think it's sexist. there's discussions later on in the series about somebody liking men, like a man liking a man, and pillow friends are frequently discussed in the books. Uh, Women of the White Tower basically comforting each other. You could use your imagination on that. So it's not that Robert didn't acknowledge that, but he also, you know, he just let this world be what it would be, and this world just happened to be full of very, very strong male female roles defined, especially in places like this little village, and places like the borderlands. And I, it's not many places. This 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 mentality of men are dumb or women are emotional, like this. Most of those points of views are from the people that are from this tiny little village, and it's really easy to see how a village cut off from the world develops their own sense of culture, and this is a good representation of that in the books. I don't think they're going to show any of that in the show, but I did go off on a tangent there. It's not Nynaeve's not the dragon. We already know that. Anyway, so Rand and Matt talk. Egwene and Nynaeve are standing on a bridge listening to the wind, and I don't think she knows what she's hearing yet. I think she knows that there's a storm coming, which is what she often says. But for her to get with Egwene and say, and have Egwene intuitively say it sounds wrong is odd. Anyway, so we move on to Perrin and Rand chipping in to give something to Matt, which is nice. And then Rand goes home, back to his little house with Tam. Rand and Tam are talking about lighting a lantern for Kari Althor, Tam's wife. And I think it's touching. It gives the show writers a good spot to show that kind of what the people of the world believe, that the wheel of time turns and spins people back out of the pattern. And they did this well. I enjoyed it. It's well done. And what Tam says meant a lot, like from a reader to watching the show to watch him say that was good. Did it have to be him? No, but I think he was a good choice. And I did want to go. So I think next is Winter Night. That's what I have here. I think it cuts away to. Oh, right, yeah. So we've got the people of the two rivers like lighting all their lanterns and putting their lanterns in the water. And there's a touching scene between Matt and his mom giving her a lantern. I don't agree with the fact that the situation exists, but it was a good move by the show to give some resolution of the conflict, I guess, at least for now. Lan shows up on a cutscene and says the Fate has Trollocs with it. The Fate has Trollocs with it, dozens. We need to leave now. Do you know which one of them it is? And she says no. And I'll just go through the rest right here, and then I'll stop for a second to explain not why it's wrong, but what the difference is. So we've got Egwene and Tom, some boy named Tom dancing, and they get attacked by these Trollocs. They're getting attacked. All the buildings are burning. Nynaeve is trying to help. I like that they showed the genuine fear of the people from the village. None of these people has had to fight in a really long time. It's really, really shocking for all these people. And I think they did a good job. And then we go... This... I was looking for the scene between... yeah, this is it. So, the whole dialogue between Rand and Tam getting attacked by a single Trolloc consists of Dad, what is that? Rand, run. And then them calling back and forth to each other. And then Rand proceeding to say, I'll get you to Nynaeve, dear light. So, not a lot of dialogue. So, a lot more in the book. It doesn't really matter. But I thought this scene was interesting. And I'm interested to see how the show addresses the difference in skill level for swordsmanship. I know that the show is putting a heavy emphasis on magic at the moment, and you know that's okay from a visual standpoint, but I hope they come back to address it, because they clearly show on screen that Tam has a heron-marked blade. And the heron-marked blade is the sign of a blade master in this world. And there's only so many of them. And the fact that a sheep herder from the Two Rivers has one is a point of interest to Lan, Moraine's warder. So I don't know if they'll ever bring it up again. But I did like seeing Tam with the heron-marked blade. I wasn't really happy with the swordsmanship because he only killed one Trolloc. And in the books, I know he killed at least 2 and then ran off with 6 more following him into the woods during his escape. And I don't know if he killed them off screen or if he just ditched them in the woods and snuck up on them to get back to Rand. But I'll be interested to see what they do with swordsmanship later on. Really like this scene when they cut to Days Conger. It shows the stubbornness of Two Rivers. In the books, Moraine has a whole monologue about how tough Manetheren used to be. That would be the place where the Two Rivers currently sits. She refers to them as having the blood of Manetheren multiple times throughout the series, and this is a good example. They got attacked by creatures they've literally never seen before or heard of, other than as myths. The myths charge into your village, and what do? You challenge them with a pitchfork and then proceed to kill as many of them as get in your way. Good job, Two Rivers folk. The next scene, I know they kind of bounce around a lot for what's going on. I know they're showing Perrin and Layla getting into their forge to defend their little area, and then the girls have run and hide. That would be Matt's sisters. They've run and hide, and that's good for them. They're supposed to survive, and then this whole scene is kind of confusing with just the dialogue. I know that Perrin kills his wife right here. And I think even though it was a very short relationship on screen and a lot of the readers don't like it at all, I did like one thing about this short marriage. And no, it's not just because it was short. It's because in the short amount of time that Layla was on screen, you could see that she was not a very verbal person. She was not a very affectionate person, but she did love Perrin. They did love each other. In every single scene that you see them together, Layla reaches up and grabs Perrin's left pinky, and it shows on their first introduction that she does that. It shows when they're sleeping in bed that she does that. It's a sign of affection for her. And it also is done right as she's dying. Right at the end of this scene where she's dying, she's holding onto his finger for dear life. I'm still here. I got a Discord notification, and I need to fix that. But I'm still here. Not that there's much to see on screen at the moment anyway. It's mostly just a Word document. Okay, I'm losing steam, but I'm almost done. I really want to finish episode 1. Really don't want to split these episodes up into 2 parts. There's a lot to cover, but the first one is going to be the hardest. I apologize for the ums and the coughing. I am a chronic smoker. I don't condone it. I feel like if you were ever offered one, don't do it. It's bad for you. I'm trying to quit. But I can't at the moment. And I know I'm not a great public speaker. I have a lot of ums in my conversation. I repeat myself a lot. And I speed up when I get excited. So I'm working on all that. It's a slow process. I hope to be good enough at this speaking part to one day do a podcast about this topic. So that hopefully as new episodes come out, we can dive right in and compare and contrast book to show, what they're getting right, what they can work on, why they're making the decisions they're making. But for now, let me just finish this. We are almost done. You know, God, Rand showing back up into the town with his father. Thank the light. My daddy needs help. Where's Nynaeve? And then Nynaeve got taken, which I thought was interesting. The Trolloc ran through the village, grabbed Nynaeve by the braid, and drug her out. Now, I believe the show writers are leading us to believe that the Trolloc somehow knows that Nynaeve might be one of these people of interest, which is quickly disabused in episode 2 when he just kind of stops and then goes and eats one of his fallen comrades. But you, as a watcher, know that she's quote-unquote important. And so her disappearing off screen right at the end of episode 1, I think, was an interesting choice. Dang. That is a really bad habit, saying those ums. It was really hard to break that. So Matt brings his sisters back to his mom, and the mom and the girls are happy to see each other. Matt is extremely disappointed because Abel and his mother hid in the house while he had to go look for them. That's also Matt. Matt will 100% risk his life to save somebody. He doesn't want to, but he will. So we switch over to Moraine. She says it's Trolloc poison. That's her only line of dialogue, I think, in this scene. It's not book accurate at all. There's a lot of other things going on. We see Moraine's Angreal in the book. We see a lot of discussion about the Fade or the Eyeless or the Murdrawl, whatever you want to call them. In the book, there's a lot of discussion about the fact that the Trollocs didn't attack the town. What they did was they attacked Rand's farm, the Abara farm, which is Perrin's last name, and they went directly to the Cawthon household. They were looking for these 3 boys, which is why they didn't completely demolish the town. They set some houses on fire, but they were specifically looking for the boys. And there's a reason they knew who those boys were, and I'll talk about it later. I believe I spoke about this at the beginning of the at the beginning up here where we're talking about the prophecy. And I don't really have a preference for how the show is directed, but I would like it if they didn't completely lie. One of the main things about the book is the Aes Sedai cleverness in telling the truth. And for Moraine and Aes Sedai, who was there to say that Guitarra Moroso was blind, it's false. I know this is writing for the show. I know it adds drama. It's just not true. I hope they never show the prophecy being spoken, because the person who gave this prophecy was the keeper of the Chronicles, the number 2 person in the tower, and I don't think they have any blind Aes Sedai at all. So I'd be interested to see how they address this if they ever choose to. It's kind of irritating more than anything else. It's not really going to damage the plot of the book, but it is irritating. And this is the end. So this is the end up to chapter 10. Moraine gives a speech, tells the boys and Egwene that they gotta go. We gotta get out of here to keep the Trollocs are gonna follow the crew, and then they head out. That's storyline wise, that's accurate. That's what happens. They're leaving. And they got to get out to keep the 2 rivers from being attacked by Trollocs again, because Moraine can't kill them all by herself. I already talked about this. This is the outro. This is Moraine giving her monologue at the end, which is chapter 1, the very first paragraph. And what I was talking about at the beginning is that I wish they would have taken the second paragraph to make the intro. And they didn't. It's a minor thing. I just think it would have been nice to reward the readers by showing that they're thinking about that. I started to add a section in here called Further Thoughts, things that are completely cut out, and I think this will become more apparent and longer as we get through, because we're talking about an entire book. This is a lot of literature, or a lot of words to read, and a lot of things that can be cut out. Tom's name is spelled with an H. I think I saw that earlier. I'm an audiobook listener, so when I see all these spellings, I think I've looked up the word Murdrol 3 or 4 times just to make sure I got the spelling right. And seeing all these names on text is not jarring, but man, these spellings are weird. So the missing Gleeman, they cut Tom Maryland out of the show all the way up to the end of season 2, which I think is frustrating. I think I see why they're doing it. I don't know if I know I don't agree with it, because Tom is essentially the bard from The Witcher, the guy that follows Henry Cavill around with his lute all the time singing, toss me a coin for your Witcher, or whatever that song was. Tom is a bard. He's a glee man. He's an entertainer. Who better to info dump for the viewer and the quote-unquote little village than the glee man, whose whole life exists for that. They could have found a really, really good talent to play this part. I'm really just kind of sad that they didn't include him. Tom Maryland is a very key component. He's there all the way to the end, of the series. He's in like the last 2 chapters of the entire 14-book series, and they cut him out. So hopefully he shows up. They did briefly show him. I can't remember the episode, but they did show him briefly. He's the one that helped Matt bury somebody. So they did show him briefly, but he hasn't been seen since, and it's really upsetting. I wanted to touch on this. I think I already mentioned it, but the hand motions and channeling, it makes for a great show, like great visuals in the show, and I approve. I think it's very entertaining to visually watch the struggle of an Aes Sedai weave the one power. I just want to know how they handle it when there's testing to become Aes Sedai and they're told they have to remain calm. So, looks good. I enjoy it. I did want to touch on a couple other things. So, one of the things that I found more amusing than anything else, a lot of these are like nitpicky things just from reading the books so often. This would never happen. There's a scene where the Trollocs or the Eyeless or somebody has taken bloody sheep, butchered sheep, and strewn them out in the shape of the dragon's fang, which is half of the Aes Sedai symbol. And unless there was an Eyeless there to force the Trollocs away, this would never happen. Trollocs eat everything and they're always hungry. So this is not going to happen ever. I don't even know why they did it in the show, other than Landman Dragrin does not need a sign that large to tell him that there's Trollocs and Murdral in the Two Rivers. That could have easily been waved away with magic. He's a warder. He knows when Shadow Spawn is nearby. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite things that the show did was the creation of the Murdral, the recreation of them rather. They're done really, really well in the show. It's not perfect. It almost can't be with the way their cloaks work, but I think they did a really good job. They got the egg-shaped head. It's smooth, pale skin with no eyes. They got the hood drawn up. Their cloaks aren't supposed to move at all. It's just kind of a trick of how they were created. But I thought they were done really well. They look terrifying. They kind of remind me of the Nazgul from the Lord of the Rings. Kind of remind me of them. I didn't realize how close they were into like carriage, like how they carry themselves, until I saw one on a horse in episode 1, and I was like, man, that was eerily similar. That'll be a topic for another day. I do want to do some kind of analysis into where writers get their inspiration from. And to really do that, I would have to look at like publishing dates and the odds of whether the author read that particular book. But I see a lot of Brandon Sanderson's inspiration has come from the Wheel of Time, either because he got to look through Robert Jordan's notes, or he was just a big fan of the show, or the book, sorry, or whatever the case may be. Brandon Sanderson has been inspired by Robert Jordan in his own work, and there's nothing wrong with it. I was listening to Pirate Software, or Thor. He's gotten really, really popular really, really fast, and he talks about it all the time. You can't, he says something like, you can't, unless you're copying the game mechanic for mechanic and just copy and pasting everything, every new game, and in my opinion, every book is an iteration on something else. So if I were to ever write a book, everything that I wrote would be 100% influenced by the Wheel of Time, by Brent Weeks, his work, by Brandon Sanderson's work, and I think that's okay. You're allowed to draw inspiration from other people's work, as long as you don't copy it verbatim. And I would like to do something like that in the future, where I talk about where I think the author got inspiration from, and see if my guesses were right at all. Or at least get somebody to agree with me. That'd be fine. I think I wrote this statement incorrectly. They do have pretty good variety when I watch the end of the episode one. It's just not as noticeable, I guess. They all seem to be like exactly the same height. They are pretty tall, which is accurate. That'll present a problem later on in the show that they're so tall and loyal. The Ogier is not. But it's okay for now. So the only thing that I wanted to point out is in the books, these things are absolutely horrifying because they're all twisted. They're not. It's not that they're scary looking. It's that they shouldn't look like what they look like. They'll have goat hooves and the face of a man with ram horns, or they'll have the face of a bear with bull horns. They're twisted, half man, half beast, and they all look more or less different. Like there's going to be some overlap, and if you have 100 Trollocs in a room, some of them are going to look the same. But part of the whole point is that they're like a mishmash of human and animal, and they're supposed to be terrifying because they're like an abomination on what nature would produce. I already talked about this. This is the heron mark blade that Tam has. I want to see how they address it down the road. I already talked about the Two Rivers defense. I did not talk about Perrin's anger. So Perrin kills his wife because he's right before he swings at her. I don't know what they're doing with the camera, but I found it fascinating. They made it really seem like Perrin had lost his mind. I don't know if they zoomed in on his face more or caught the angle just right, but I was really impressed with how they captured that he was absolutely enraged. Full on berserker, no thought in his head, he's furious. You know, somebody is attacking his home, his wife or whatever, and he's got the blood rage. Uh, it's a good scene, and I think they did it well. I don't think he really gets like that until later on. But I know why they put it here. I know why they put it here because his conflict with the White Cloaks when he's with Egwene doesn't exist in the show. So they had to put it somewhere to drive his character along. And one of the things I was thinking about, and I even put it here, Perrin is a very, very internal character. Viewed from the outside, he would probably look something like Lan until he exploded. And then you'd be like, well, where did that come from? Why are you so angry? Perrin doesn't talk a lot. But when he gets angry, he gets really angry. So what I wrote was just a very, very short, like one paragraph synopsis, I guess. Because as viewers, we have learned several things in the pilot. There is magic. There is an evil side of magic that men use. Good and evil are searching for the dragon reborn. Moraine stopped the Trollocs from destroying the Two Rivers and killing everyone. Moraine is taking 4 people out of the village to head to the White Tower. I think that about sums it up. You know, everything else is details, and I feel that that little summary synopsis of chapter 1 through 10 of the book matches season 1, episode 1 of the books. The only way it would be more accurate is if I just deleted 4. It's taking people out of the village to head to the White Tower. It's accurate. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to figuring out how to edit this because I want to try and get out some of my coughs and my bathroom break that I took. And big props to anybody who does streaming because this is exhausting. I don't know how people do this, in particular the people that do like subathons where they're online literally for days because their subscribers are forcing them to. I say forcing. so it's all in good fun, I'm sure. But I don't know how they do it, and I would like to point out that the streamer that I mentioned earlier, Pirate Software, he streams for 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, unless he's sick or there's some kind of emergency. And props to him, because I've only been talking for an hour and a half. My throat is all messed up. I'm worn out emotionally from sitting in front of a camera where other people can see me. So shout out to him. Good job, Thor, for being an absolute beast. And you're the reason that I'm making this attempt. I got inspired by you doing this every day. So I gotta figure out how to edit this and maybe put it on YouTube, and hopefully this is watchable, because I'm watching the Twitch Studio or whatever it is I'm using, and I've got slow frames, 1300 frame drops. It says encoder FPS is at 45. So I've got some issues. I'm not really worried about it since there's literally nobody watching. But I hope this doesn't impact like the quality of the video that I want to move to YouTube. So, all right, this was kind of fun. I learned quite a bit about what I want to do, and I don't mind talking about it. I would like somebody else to talk to when I go through this, because it would be nice to have an actual conversation. Next, that I'm going to try to do next week is going to be Season 1, Episode 2. This is going to be their trip to, and I believe out of, Shadar Logoth. So I'll have to find the end of the chapter in the book and read all the way through it again and watch the episode. I already have the transcript for every single episode, so like if I come down here, yeah, I've got, spoiler alert, Lanfear is in episode 8 at the very beginning. And I eventually want all of the seasons to look something like this, where I've got it kind of broke out and I'm able to quickly go through one thing or the other. That way when another episode, if they do a season 3 or another episode, that way I can quickly get to my notes and come up with a response every time they drop an episode. That's my goal, is to be prepared for season 3, episode 1, and to try to have enough information together to have an actual podcast revolving around show versus book. Eventually that's going to transition to me discussing other books. I think I've already mentioned their names several times. The Brandon Sanderson books and the Brent Weeks books are both really well done, and I definitely want to talk about them. So thanks for anybody that stopped in even for a second. I appreciate it.